918, we're headed down into the cellar where the doors just opened on its own. Give us a sign that you want to communicate with us.
Broadcasting from the darkest corners of the Pacific Northwest, this is Transcendence.
Now you will receive us. Do not ask for your food or you're hungry. We do not want your tired and sick. It is your corrupt we claim. It is your evil that will be sought by us. With every breath, we shall hunt them down, 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 down.
The power of Christ compels you. The power of Christ compels you. The power of Christ compels you.
Out of my way. People have to be told.
You know I can't let you do that.
What are you guys?
Well, we've been called ghost hunters, paranormal researchers.
But we prefer to be known simply as
Emma Strange and Charlie Ripley.
Hello, my spooky dudes. Welcome to Transcendence. I'm Emma Strange.
And I'm Charlie Ripley.
And I have absolutely no idea what we're talking about today, so Charlie's going to take the lead because I don't know.
That's what's going to make today fun. It's all surprises. Well, there's a couple things on the agenda today. Number one is we just have miscellaneous things we want to talk about. The main one I've been dying to get to is what makes a cryptid valid versus what is not valid, such as why is Bigfoot more legitimate than, say, Slender Man or the Day of All the Blood, if you remember hearing that creepypasta from our last episode.
So, are you asking me, or are we just like opening up the forum here as to what makes one valid versus the other?
Well, both.
Okay.
Since our audience is not able to currently talk to us, I would love to hear your opinion.
Oh no, we have the dial-in thing. We can still. I'm still stuck in the 90s where we still have like dial-up service and phones attached to the wall. So it's like I don't know how. Anyway, I'm tired. I work all the time, so my brain's not computing fully. But as to what makes certain entities more valid than the other, I think the comparison that you talked to me about prior to this was Slender Man like versus Bigfoot and why one has more validity than the other. And for me, the answer is pretty simple. One was a tulpa, like one was clearly made up by Redditors for. I think the story was that it was a contest at. Someone made up Slenderman for, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah,
and,
I think that's correct.
Yeah, and then Bigfoot has just been around for like the longest time that people have supposedly seen, and like Yetis, abominable snowmans, like that whole thing. So, I mean, to me, it seems pretty cut and dry.
So you're saying because it's older, it's more valid?
Now you make me sound like a dumbass, though. So
no, I mean that is the crux of the argument, right? That one is clearly just made up. So how is it a valid cryptid versus things that have been spotted and talked about and discussed for? I don't know how long has Bigfoot been discussed for. I imagine since
it's been historically reported for like centuries, but like. We'll just keep with the Bigfoot versus Slenderman argument for the sake of not having to dive into a whole bunch of other holes. So, there's cultures across the board that all have their version of Bigfoot, and of course we're from the Pacific Northwest, so we have our actual Bigfoot apparently out at Crater Lake. But it's just one of those topics where there's been a lot of evidence suggesting that it's real. I listen to a lot of paranormal podcasts, a lot of cryptid podcasts, so. I hear a lot of people who are fairly convinced that they have physical evidence to support what they seen, heard, experienced. And Slenderman, I mean, it's clearly something that was internet created. We all know that. So, I mean, I don't know how much argument there is to have it, I mean,
people still went on hunts to find Slenderman. I remember that was huge to go out into the forest and look for him and spot him, and tons of people were photoshopping and things, and I don't know. To me, it's just as valid. There was, if not more than Bigfoot recently. I mean, Bigfoot's always been a big thing, but compare him to any other cryptid besides Bigfoot and Nessie, and more people were interested in Slender Man in recent history than pretty much any other cryptid, I think that gives it some validity.
Well, there's there's tulpas, so that things that are man-made that eventually take on a life of their own, and we'll eventually do an episode on that because that's a whole other thing that requires a lot more research and a lot more know-how to talk about in an educated manner. But I mean, we grew up with Slender Man because we grew up on Reddit, so I mean, there's been drowned. I mean, and that's one of your favorites.
That is my favorite creepypasta. And that's before I actually knew what creepypastas was. So that's the first one I also fell for, because I was like, whoa, this story is so phenomenal. How is it's not on the news? Why aren't people talking about this? And then, 5 seconds of Googling it later, I was like, oh, that's why people aren't talking about that.
And before I knew the difference between like the creepypastas and I forget what the subreddit is called now, but where they have like all the paranormal stories and stuff.
Oh, there's like the fake one and then the quote real one.
Yeah, so I didn't know the difference between the two at the time, so I was reading all these really cool stories that were really phenomenally well written, and then I remember like one day I was reading one about this person who was talking about how they went on this hiking trip to find this city that had just, everyone in there had vanished, and maybe they had gone underground or something, or whether like, I don't know. And it had like a lot of supposed historical and scientific significance to it. Like that's how well it was written. And I remember like reading it and finishing reading it and turning to you and saying, hey, take a look at this. What do you think about that? And then you asked me what subreddit it was from. It was from Creepypasta. And I was like, oh. And then you explained to me like the difference between the two because I didn't know at the time. And
well, that's kind of the glorious thing about Reddit too, though, is that like the one subreddit that's dedicated to fake stories, the one subreddit rule, number one, is you have to pretend that it's real. So everyone's going to comment on it like it's real or experiencing as real. And so if you're an outsider looking in, you have no way of knowing like there's this inside joke going on, and very realistically, news media, other people, or just innocent people are looking at like, oh, this is something real. They share it, tweet it, and then that's how it takes on life of its own because so many people don't know that it's fake, that it becomes real to people. And then that's when you get sightings and spottings, and then again, the questions come up.
That's kind of exactly what happened with Slenderman with those girls that, went out and murdered, right? Supposedly they saw it. I don't know if that was actually something they just...
That one, I don't know all the case details, but I do know that it was a high profile, and they stabbed their friend like 666 times, and they said Slenderman told them to do it, and there's a lot of controversy over, were they just saying that to get out of trouble, or is it a mental illness, or I don't know. It's too recent. I couldn't comment on it without actually doing research because I'd hate to be, disrespectful to the families that have suffered through all that.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, yeah, that's pretty much my opinion on it. I don't really have a whole lot more to say on that.
Our podcast is an hour and a half, so you've got a lot more filler to do. So,
well, you're the one that put together this episode, so I don't got all the research and shit in front of me, so I don't know what to tell you. We can talk about, let's talk about, so obviously we're all in quarantine right now, and hopefully that is going okay for everybody. I know half of us are bored out of our fucking minds, and I don't blame you because I'm in that boat, but we haven't been doing a whole lot other than working in Animal Crossing, so and we're stuck in the house like everybody else.
How many hours did you have on Animal Crossing? Is that
something
you want to admit over on the radio?
I think as of 2 days ago it was 485, so it's probably in the 500 range right now.
That's dedication.
And yet my island still looks like shit. I don't have anything to show for it. Nothing. At all. Anyway.
Back to the spooky things.
Quarantine. So we've been at home. Can't do a whole lot of investigations. And it's a bummer because we had reached out to several different establishments where, we'd wanted to do our own investigations, like what was that part? Enchanted Forest, because we're literally like 45 minutes away from it. And I grew up in Enchanted Forest. Well, not literally, but I went there all the time with my dad and then with my family when I was younger. And it was never like super popular because we had Oaks Park and then which was always considered better because Enchanted Forest, as some of you may know, is a little dated, but in a good way. But Ghost Adventures, I guess, did an episode there, which I haven't seen personally, but it blew up, and so now they're not allowing anybody in for right now because of construction, and I don't know what experience they had with Ghost Adventures, but the way that I understood the email response that I got was that they just weren't wanting people going in there like they did. So,
and that's not unique to us. No. I do, of course, a lot of research on Reddit and watching the paranormal forums and Twitters and all that, and there's quite a few people who post about they want to investigate the area, but they'll never have the chance to because some other group got there first and trashed it, were disrespectful, got the police called, trespassed, broke the rules, any of those various things. You know, like we talked about in the last episode a little bit on like etiquette when you're in a graveyard and not reenacting, murders and things like that. I feel like there also needs to be a course on that for how to conduct a proper investigation respectfully so that you don't ruin it for everyone else.
A lot of it's really common sense, though, and you wouldn't think that it would be something, that type of etiquette would be something that you would have to actually teach in an educational setting. Because to me, it's just common sense. Don't be a dick. It's that easy, but apparently...
It's not that easy.
Yeah, so... But yeah, that was one of the locations, and we got an email back from the Heceta Head Lighthouse up on the Oregon coast, and we actually did have a spot where we could go and stay overnight and bring all our equipment and do everything, but then, Rona hit, so nobody's open, and so we've kind of been stuck just doing, like, graveyard stuff, and visiting graveyards and trying to get readings there and all that. And we've had a couple really great hotspots, and we're going to keep those locations as far as names to ourselves, the lesser famous ones, because it's my personal belief that I don't want them becoming these playgrounds for other people to come in and be disrespectful. And they are resting places. And a lot of people view cemeteries and graveyards as like this entertainment thing, and that's not what they're there for. So I don't want to.
Well, not only that, but one of the cases we're going to talk about, we'll call Mr. B. He passed away just a couple of years ago. So, when we did Lafayette and we talked about it, and we talked about Layla, she passed away over 100 years ago. So
100 years ago, yeah.
Chances are she doesn't have, a loved one close to her listening that can become offended or hurt or reopen those wounds. But when someone passed away just a few years ago and you start hearing people, at the grave and doing things or things you don't agree with or different things of that nature, you could reopen old wounds, and that's not our intention.
And the photos that we take of gravestones, we don't take pictures of ones that are recent. And I know in a couple of my blogs you'll see me like walk by graves that are more up to date than other ones, and it's never our intention to be disrespectful. When Charlie and I go in there, me personally, so I go in and I like talking to the people, and I know that seems really bizarre to a lot of people. But to me, whether they're dead or alive, they are still people, and I still very much feel, depending on who wants to talk, I still very much feel their presence is intact. And so I talk to them just like I'm talking to anyone else. And I lost my point. What the hell was I talking about?
We're talking to people who've passed away a while ago.
So while in those videos you may see me conversing with graves that are more people that are more recent, it's we're not going to take blatant photos and post them for the internet to see and converse about, because it's incredibly disrespectful. And one of the gentlemen that we'll talk about here shortly, we were, how long were we with him?
I think we were at that particular site for at least an hour, and he was active the entire time, and not just like minorly, when I was using the dowsing rods, it was heavy pulls.
All the way around, yeah.
he moved around the entire area with us, and it was we both saw him. So it was probably the most active and the most powerful, I guess I will say is the right word,
but
experience we've had.
Exactly. But going into that, we're not going to release his name. We're not going to release his location or anything about him, his family, what we found in our own personal research, because the family is still very much grieving him and do that. So that's one of those etiquette things. Don't go and take pictures and video and stuff of a whole bunch of other like recent graves, and because people are still grieving them. They'll see it inevitably because the internet is that way, and I don't want to cause more grief for people who have already lost so much.
Yeah, that would be bad.
So
let's jump into it. So we went there 2 weeks ago now. It was a very nice little area. It was not a large graveyard at all, and a big part of us going out to the graveyards is just learning some history and walking around with Corona. There's not a lot of places we can go, but since they're typically empty, it's a good place to be able to walk around and just...
Not a Memorial Day weekend, though.
Yeah, that was something else. But so we get here, and we get out of the car, and Emma just beelines to his grave. Like, the first place she walks to is she's instantly drawn there, and... just immediately we started getting hits on the dowsing rod, strong answers, yes and no. And, we did our standard test, which we're going to talk about a little bit later about standardized questions, but, left for no, right for yes. Okay, now let's swap them. Can you do this? Can you do that? Just to show that we're not, being influenced by the wind or anything like that. And it was, again, the strongest I've ever felt it. And when Emma walked away, I did a couple things like, can you point to my wife walking around? Then the dowsing rods were able to point to her and follow her as she was moving around the graveyard. So that was the first part that was like, wow, this is incredible. I've not seen that before.
I feel like I should explain why exactly I beelined to that like place in particular. So Charlie and I each have our own unique ways of how we do what we do. As I think I've alluded to in previous episodes, I'm not sure, I don't remember what we put, but I'm an empath. So a lot of what I can do is based on feeling. And so what I'll do is I'll canvass a graveyard after asking permission, if it's okay for us to be there. And we really haven't gotten a whole lot of no's except for one time in Lafayette. But so what I'll do is I'll canvass and I'll see if anyone wants to reach out to me. And I'm not a medium. I'm not a I just am so tired. I cannot think of words today. I'm not anyone that can like conjure up, the deceased and have them right then and there. I get feelings, and intuition will tell me whether or not a person is wanting to reach out to us to converse. And historically, I've been pretty accurate so far.
Yeah, I would say that's spot on. I don't think there's been a time in recent memory that you've been wrong. Another example was that we'll talk about a little bit later was Mr. S, where we went to one grave. You said there was something here. They didn't want to talk to us, but they immediately pointed us to the person who did want to talk to us. So, I can't think of a single time we've been misled by the intuition anytime recently.
But yeah, so I'll get a hit, and then I'll bookmark that, and then I'll come back around to Charlie, who's doing his thing, and then he'll bring the dowsing rods over and start actually doing the talking part. And I'll talk, but just for some reason the rods just will not work for me. So.
Yeah, that's something I wanted to bring up, and this is I talked to a few people who are skeptics, and they told me that dowsing rods have already been explained, that they do work. They find water, natural metals, or whatever it is that they do, and there's explainable science behind it. But to me, that's debunked because I get hits like crazy. I can do all sorts of things with them, and then I hand them over to Emma, and they're just copper rods that do nothing.
They won't even move. I can't even clear them. They won't clear for me.
Yeah, so
It's frustrating.
It's strange. I don't know what it is. I couldn't tell you what is causing that, but to me, it's definitely something unknown or something paranormal, I guess.
I don't remember. I know we got those when we were on a group hunt at the Oregon State Hospital like years ago, and they've just kind of been sitting in storage. Did I use them then, or was it predominantly you then also?
No, it was me, and that wasn't at the Oregon State Hospital. It was the first trip we took with that group.
The walk.
Because they took
Salem.
us to...
the Brudos Bridge and...
Yeah, but the place where we learned that they worked was when we were across from the one haunted theater next to the other haunted theater, where supposedly a person fell off the scaffolding and got hung.
You want the Reed Opera House or the Elsinore? The
Elsinore. So it wasn't the Elsinore. It's across the street from the Elsinore. Supposedly there's another haunted theater there because someone, a mistake happened and they died. And that's when we just asked, can you show us where you're at? And we snapped that picture. That's been one of our best pictures.
That was in front of the Reed Opera House, and that was across from the county courthouse in downtown Salem.
Yeah, next to, they said it was the hanging tree, but we also found out later that a lot of the information they give us was spotty at best. So I don't know if there's any truth to that.
Yeah, that's one of the main reasons we don't do group things anymore. Because a lot of people that we found, and I'm not trying to like shit on anybody, because I understand that we have to make, people have to make a living and are trying to do something that's entertaining. We are here for educational and research purposes. So while those ghost walks may be entertaining for a lot of people, I mean, I love them too. Don't get me wrong. I am not a huge fan of giving people historical points and then those people going and spreading that misinformation, and it just becomes this domino effect.
Well, I mean, as long as you're upfront about it, it's not an educational tour. It's an entertainment tour.
That's not how it was presented.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. If they did present it that way, because like we did that escape room that we needed to go back to, and they like had a little intro story, and you said it was really cool, and then you found out it was made up. But
I was super disappointed.
But it was fun. It made it a lot more fun. They had this like little story that this escaped hermit was living in the underground tunnels because our area has underground tunnels, and so if it's entertainment purposes, there's no problem with it. But when you present it as this is a historically accurate, and then you make everything up, there's an issue.
And that's one of the biggest things that I have against a lot of the ghost hunting shows, because as we've seen that Lafayette, as we went there, we talked to the Historical Society, it's all debunked. And yet all of these just huge ghost hunting shows and radio shows and movies and blah, 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 just keep presenting this misinformation. And that's, and unfortunately, at least this, from what I'm seeing, because of that misinformation, it brings more people into the town, which it isn't always a bad thing. But from the videos that we've been seeing of all these teenagers posting, they're like, oh, this witch got hung here. That's cool and edgy. So let's go and hang out in the graveyard and be fucking hooligans and destroy things.
Yeah, and I mean, I understand it too. We got a thermal camera, and we add that to our arsenal of tools, just to be able to, goof around and take some pictures and see if we can get anything thermally. I don't know what the proper term is. But, my first thought was, and I hate to admit this is my first thought, but I'm gonna admit it was, how easy it would be with our wooden floors to just put my foot down and make a footprint and then take a picture of it, and bam, you've got a thermal image of a foot. And it's so easy to fake ghost pictures and misinformation and things like that. And that's what gets popular. I guarantee you that if we posted a real evidence of a foot appearing in our haunted house, that would be probably our most, retweeted and active tweet we've done to date.
Well, since we're on that route, if you're comfortable talking with it, so Charlie runs basically all of our social media, and so he gets a lot of hits from other people who are interested in the paranormal, and people send you videos and pictures all the time, right?
Yeah, I've gotten a few people who send me DMs like, hey, can you, feature this? Can you show this? Or what do you think of this? And all those sorts of things, yeah. And
you get a lot of stuff that, to me personally, looks like nonsense.
There is one that we talked about and discussed, and basically we thought it was someone hiding and shutting a door, like filming themselves shutting a door and trying to pass it off as
right. And that's
as
one of
ghost.
those things. We weren't there, so we can't say for
Yeah.
sure one way or the other. But
or there's another one that again I don't want to sit here and turn this into like bashing other things, but there's one Twitter that posts like super zoomed in photos of bark and talks about all the spirits and ghost faces they see in the trees, and then they blast it out to all the paranormal communities, and then all the, I don't want to call them fraudsters, but all these paranormal communities that maybe don't have the integrity repost that, and it goes huge, and that that just serves to perpetuate the problem we have in the paranormal community, that we try and make it a legitimate science, and so many people aren't here for legitimate science. They're here for the spookies and for the fun.
right. And we were talking yesterday, actually, about a lot of things that happen in the paranormal community that aren't the best. And one of those things is evidence being black and white, and parapsychologists and other people in the community who present information as black and white in a field where you can't really have a whole lot of black and white, because the paranormal is in the supernatural and all of that good stuff. There just isn't a whole lot of supporting evidence to prove it one way or the other.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many times, again, DMs, messages, and things across various medias where you'll see someone post like, "Help, I think I'm being haunted by XYZ," and someone will come in and instantly be like, "I'm the authority on ghosts, and I will tell you that if you move your left shoe over here and then nail this to the wall, it'll be gone." And someone else will come in and be like, "No, that's absolutely wrong. If you studied on this prestigious online university like I did, you would know that you need to change your bed sheets." And it's just like, there's no prestigious university for ghost hunting. I'm sorry. There's lots of information, and it all
There's
boils down
courses
to...
you can take for sure. I've seen them, and I doubt their legitimacy. And I know that there's like parapsychology courses, and I've looked into some of those, and I want to take a couple of those. But it's so frustrating, because there's certain things that I believe personally, but if people ask me advice, like anything that I ever give as far as advice, as far as any of this goes, and even as far as Wicca or any sort of pagan-centric stuff, what works for me is not the bottom line. So, for example, a lot of people are anti-Ouija boards, and personally, I think it's really silly, because it is, most of the time, cardboard, wood, and with some symbols on it. And if you want to communicate with someone on the other side, you don't need that conduit. And it's frustrating.
Not to mention Hasbro makes the Ouija boards. They have it trademarked. So
we bought our first Ouija board at
Toys R Us. The group who makes My Little Pony also makes Ouija boards, which I think is a wonderful crossover. Friendship is the Occult, I think, would be an awesome spin-off for My Little Pony.
That would be such a cute t-shirt. Hold on, I'm gonna write that down. I'm gonna have Jen illustrate it. Hold on, give me a sec.
I'm Satan Pony.
What was it? Friendship is the Occult.
Yeah. And and more on I'm going to give a shout out to Kane Andrews, one of our supporters and a personal friend of mine who's very involved in the paranormal and our Discord and all that. We asked him some information about when we were having some issues with shadow people, and he was able to give us information we had never heard before, because if you Google shadow people,
there's nothing,
there's
and it's
nothing.
crazy how little information there is.
So, but I guarantee you that if we reached out to anyone else, we would have gotten different answers, so that no one person is the authority, but I guess that's just my point to that we're all learning, we're all trying to compare notes and figure things out, but you can't just black and white, this is the answer, this is not. It's not a science in that way.
Right. And on that topic of conversation, anything that we ever say as far as paranormal goes, those are our experiences and only our experiences. So while those things may have worked for us, like Charlie, dowsing rods work like almost all the time. But that doesn't mean that tool is going to work for you. A lot of people like doing
tarot cards, divining.
Right, and I mean, I use runes, so I'm in that, but I'm talking more along the lines of like tools. People love using EMF meters in the paranormal community. I'm not a huge fan, especially in our day and age. There's electricity everywhere, and so it's so hard to be able to differentiate between one or the other. And granted, this is just opinion. I'm not an EMF expert, but it just seems like not so much of a valid tool that, you know, can...
Well,
it's that black and white again.
Even, we'll go farther down the list than EMF tools, because those different opinions on those across the board. With like cell phone apps, if you download a ghost hunting app that shows you the ghosts, or that is used as a spirit box, you know, unless you know programming and can open up that program and look into it, it would not be hard to program something that would make it say an audio file or play an audio file every now and then to play different words or things like that. So again, those are entertainment purposes only. And when you sell it as entertainment, that's great. But when you're trying to use a cell phone app as a legitimate tool for cell phone or ghost hunting, I question the validity of that as well.
This is a little bit of an offshoot. I just thought of it because there's a whole thing on TikTok going on right now about this filter that you can apparently detect ghosts.
Oh, and the rainbow one?
Yeah, and personally, I call bullshit on that. Our house is legitimately haunted, and it always has been, and I couldn't pick up anything. And I'm not saying that that's, you know, again, the bottom line. That doesn't mean that it doesn't work, but intuition's like, nah, it's nothing.
If somebody could program an app that finds ghosts, I don't think, well, actually, I take that back. As I say, I don't think they'd sell to TikTok as a filter, but that might be the best way to make money off of it.
Crazier things have happened. But going along those lines, there's a lot of people that lost loved ones on the app, and they were using it to, you know, maybe pick up a loved one. So as people who research paranormal activity, a lot of people that are listening to this do so. And if you are going in and doing investigations in people's homes and they are experiencing something like that, and this is just, again, personal belief, and I know that everyone's going to agree with this, and that's A-okay. But if they're experiencing activity and they believe it to be the loved one, and for some reason you find that is not the case, moralistically, don't go up to that person and be like, yeah, hey, your pipes are just fucked, and yeah, don't do that. Let them grieve and believe what they need to believe to get them through that. Don't be a dildo.
Well, I mean, that's been a huge topic of controversy, because when you talk about the those cold readers, I remember Sylvia Brown and some of the other people that people accuse them of taking advantage of people with grief to, you know, they say they summon those people and get to say the last goodbyes or last messages. You know, some people say they're taking advantage of them and taking their money. So I can see where people are like, well, no, if they legitimately think a ghost is here and they're trying to talk with it, it could be harmful or it could be helpful to them. It's
all situational. Again, gray areas.
Okay, side note on that, though, because I have to ask now. So we've been talking a little bit about, you know, when these entities, spirits, ghosts, whatever you want to call it, are talking to us. Is there like a limited energy, or how long can you stay on this plane, or is it, you know, it requires a lot of energy to do one thing or another? So on to the TikTok filter. If you had enough energy, stamina, ghost points, whatever you want to call it, to be summoned to this world, and it's some kid on TikTok trying to catch you, on a scale of 1 to 10, how mad would you be if that was your one chance to come back to this plane of existence, and it's some 13-year-old kid asking you to Fortnite dance with him for his TikTok video to make him viral?
I'd dab with a ghost. I ain't got no shame.
Would you haunt that person?
Wait, me personally? Would I haunt?
Yes.
Would I haunt?
If they summoned you for a TikTok video?
I don't feel like I have a family-friendly answer for that.
Okay.
I'm getting old and I really don't like children anymore, so I don't mean that. I love kids. I just don't like teenagers when they're going through their phases.
When they're teenagers?
Yeah. I mean, I was a teenager. I know I was a dildo, but I wasn't near as much of a dildo as a lot of the ones I see lately, so.
So let's go back on topic to Mr. B. Says that was like a 30-minute tirade, completely off topic.
That's what happens.
So Mr. B gave us a lot of great hits, and we asked him if it'd be okay if we walked around. He said yes, so we went and walked around for a little bit.
Well, it's funny. So we drove up there because we pick a graveyard off of a list that's local to us, and then we go and visit it because there's a ton here in Oregon. And we went because the architecture of it looked cool, and they had a burying church on the property, and we had a really cool experience with another burying church locally, and we were like, oh, let's check this out. And immediately I felt a pull towards this gentleman's grave, and I couldn't figure out why. And the closer I got, just the more I was like so close to having a mental breakdown. Like, just the grief was overwhelming.
I'm pretty sure you did break down in tears at one point.
I had to walk away just because I couldn't do it. And I went and tried to get my shit together, and then I came back to Charlie, and it started getting better the further away that I got, and then as soon as I started coming back, it just started getting bad again. And but we got stuff to do, so I came back, and Charlie was asking questions and stuff, and I mean, you were there, so.
Well, here's the most interesting question we asked. We said we're not going to reveal any personal information, but I think this bears talking about, and it shouldn't release too much. One of the questions we asked was, is there a hell?
Mm-hmm.
And we got a firm no on that.
And I thought that was interesting.
It definitely was an interesting answer.
But it gets better.
And then when we researched a little bit deeper into this person, we found out this person's personal belief, they did not believe in hell while they were living. So then that begs the question of...
I feel like I need to elaborate. They were part of the LDS church. So, and I don't know a whole lot about LDS, but Charlie knows a little bit more.
Not enough to talk about it and
in length.
A quick Google search told me that the answer is not quite that black and white, that they don't believe or they do believe, but I guess the general consensus I got from the little research I did was that typically it's not considered what you or I would consider, I guess Christian hell is what you'd call it, so the concept was different. So this person had beliefs in their life that said this didn't exist, and they carried that over with them.
Mm-hmm.
Which then gets on to the interesting conversation. I know we just got back onto Mr. B, but time for a sidebar again. I was talking to you a little bit about I Am Legend, which movie was okay. The book is 1,000 times better. Please read the book. In that book,
you told me it was abysmal.
What?
The I Am Legend. Yeah, you said something about like all he did was like masturbate all day long and kill vampires or something.
I mean, that does happen, but.
Okay.
So part of, I think his name is Neville, Robert Neville or something like that. Part of what he's doing as a part of this is he finds these, we'll call them vampires. I don't think they ever actually call them vampires, and that's a whole nother discussion. But he finds that the ones who were not Christian in life were not affected by the cross or Christian imagery, even though the ones who were affected by it. So basically, when he found a Christian vampire and he put a cross on it, it would do the stereotypical burn, run away, hate it. But if he found one that did not believe in that, it had no effect. And so that going back to Mr. B, that's the question is, does your personal belief have an impact on your belief in when you're an entity, when you're a spirit, when you're a ghost in the afterlife? And I think that's an interesting question that will probably never be answered, but I think it bears asking. It's a very, very interesting question, I think.
The interaction with him as a whole was just incredibly interesting. So I came back to hang out with Charlie, and Charlie usually asks me what questions I wanna ask, and I kind of stood there a little bit because I was trying to, figure out what I was feeling and interpreting and stuff. And Charlie asked me what I was doing, and I was just like, I think he feels really bad for making me cry. And Charlie asked, he's like, do you feel bad for making my wife cry? And that was a very sharp yes. And it was weird. It was really odd because when I came back, after standing there for a bit, I felt whatever I was feeling, that just insurmountable grief. It just slowly started to fade away. Right around that time that
I think that was his charisma, because he was a very charismatic
very
guy.
Sweet guy.
You would not feel in danger around this person. They
No.
felt so like a loving father. It was very, very nice.
Yeah, and he really wasn't that much. Maybe 5 to 10 year age difference. So he really wasn't that much older. No. We did the math on that. He would have been about our parents' age.
Yeah.
So yeah, it makes sense. And he had children. So I very much felt a fatherly love there, and it was a really good experience. And after asking him a bunch of questions, we got a lot of good answers. And I wish we didn't record it. I was like so into it and just trying
we
to.
couldn't.
Even if we couldn't,
yeah.
And which is the unfortunate part. Like, all the good stuff that we get usually is never.
One of the
recorded.
questions he answered, though, since you brought up, he gave us a lot of answers. This was one of the interesting ones that I've always wondered on. I'm so glad we asked. So we asked, when you are interacting with our tools, is it you like reaching out a ghostly hand and physically grabbing the tool and moving it, or is it like a telekinesis summoning of energy? And he said it was a summoning of energy, a movement of the mind. So it wasn't like a physical manifestation moving things, but rather I don't even know what you call it.
That wasn't the answer I was expecting, personally. On a personal level, I thought it was going to be more of him grabbing
a
it.
physical, like, ghost hand reaching out and grabbing things, but that's not the answer we got. But again, that could be influenced by his beliefs or a lot of other things we don't know, but it was definitely a fascinating question and answer.
While we're on the topic of energy, we were talking about this the other day, about how, so a valid question to ask us or ask me is like, do you get different feelings when you talk to different entities? And the answer is yes. So, for example, Charlie and I tried talking to my grandfather who passed a couple Septembers ago, and his energy is very warm and very. My grandfather was a goofball. He loved doing pranks. He loved joking. He loved doing all that kind of stuff. And so it was, that kind of energy was around with it. And I can feel when it's here and when it's not. And with Mr. B, I got and this is prior to us knowing anything about his life. And it was very fatherly, very warm, very, like Charlie said, very charismatic, very devout, and not in a like crazy way, but just like a very religious man and very devoted, to his faith, his family, and that's what I got from him. And then Layla was a very, trying to figure out how to describe hers. Hers is a little more complex. It's how I explained to Charlie, to me, it was a woman who also had a bit of a playful side, a very tomboyish side, but because of the time period she grew up in, she wasn't able to articulate that fully in public. And she had, that relationship with her sisters where she got to goof off a little bit when she was with her sisters, and with her husband a little bit, but, she was born, in the 1800s. So, a lot of that isn't acceptable in public. And that's what I got from her. And so it's very different across the board. And when we were talking to Mr. B, one of the questions we stereotypically ask with every, walkthrough that we do is there anyone else here who wants to talk to us? Do you know anyone else that wants to talk to us? And he pointed us towards the burial church again, and behind that burial church was a woodshed. And do you want me to keep going, or do you want to pick up?
Keep going.
So behind there is a burial church, and Mr. B was like, I don't know what he wants to talk to you about, but he wants to talk to you. And so we went over there, and we walked over there. And it's so funny because I never felt his energy leave us. He walked with us, and I felt that. And it was confirmed when we walked past that church window, and I saw his reflection in the church window. And it was only for a couple of seconds, but I saw it, and I was just like, okay, he's walking with us. He looked like he was walking like right next to us. And later on, when we were in the car, it started to rain, so we were inside the car, and he was still with us in the car, like
talking
Charlie,
to us. And I saw him in the mirror for a brief second, like, and I don't have that experience. I don't see things as well.
Is that
as
your
Emma.
first thing that you've seen?
That's not the first thing, because I had that whole thing with the
right, but like
the demon
legitimately
daughter
on
and that's the first thing I saw on one of our investigations. Yeah,
the demon daughter. I'm sorry. It's not...
So
anyway,
he took us to the shed, and let me tell you, I hated that shed. This is the first time. Like, okay, so we've already explained. Emma is the empath. She's the one who has all the feeling. I typically don't have intuition on these things. I typically don't have. I'm in the moment. I'm there to keep myself safe and keep her safe, and I'm a little bit of a safety nut in that. And as soon
you
as
grew
I
up in a military family, so it's just bred in you that you're on alert all the
the
time.
second I got near that shed, my fight or flight activated. And one fun fact about me, I don't have a flight. My thing is 100% fight 100% of the time. So it was just like adrenaline dump and get ready to fight. And I could not figure out why. We talked a little bit about it, and the shed is dark. And other fun fact about me, I'm terrified of the dark. I cannot stand to be in the dark. So,
which is why you'll rarely see us do investigations at night.
It makes sense that it's a dark space, and it's clearly like a good space for someone to hide in. So there's 1,000 logical reasons, and we also know that the fight or flight is activated by so many different things. Your brain's going 1,000,000 miles a minute, so there's so many different things that you don't even notice. It's all subconscious. So was it a ghostly presence? I couldn't say, but it gave me a bad feeling for certain.
And it's so odd because I didn't get that at all. I felt a lot of regret and sorrow, but I didn't feel anything bad. I felt... So the shed didn't have a door on it, and it was just this open, and it had some like flower pots and some like old just fake flowers and a couple like tools and stuff in there, nothing big. And the floor was completely wooden with some planks down on it, and we were talking with whatever entity was there, and we couldn't find evidence to support what it was telling us, but from what we got off the dowsing rods, it was a young man in his mid to late 20s who had had a farming accident near that area, and the graveyard shares a border with farmland, and they were doing stuff while we were there too. So it makes sense, but he said that he was buried there, and there was obvious energy in one of the back corners of that shed. That I won't deny that. The ground there, I jumped back a little bit because I went towards it, and then the ground started to sink beneath my feet. So I was like, nope, we done. But I don't know. It wasn't negative. It just felt so sad, and not in like the grief, like losing a loved one, but like just bitter, and it's just, I don't know. I felt bad for whatever was there.
Yeah, and we didn't have the tools at the time. We're going to go back with some more tools to see if we can help try and figure out more information, because the information we got, we couldn't find anything online to support. Doesn't mean it doesn't exist, just means that it either wasn't in the news or the time frames are off, or who knows. There could be a million different things.
We don't know.
So we're going to take more tools back there and try and find it. But the fact that Mr. B led us there, this other thing talked with us, and then was satisfied. It told us what it needed to tell us, and then it was just back to Mr. B.
And it's so with the dowsing rods, and I know a lot of people are naysayers on it, but so Charlie and I try and do as much testing as we possibly can with him to make sure that there isn't any flaw in it, and to make sure that we're not getting biased readings, and that the readings that we're getting aren't, subtle pulls in his arms to make them go one way or the other. And oops, sorry, I went away from the mic there for a second. And so one of the things we were doing while we were sitting in the car was I pulled up this gentleman's obituary, and there were certain things in there that I told Charlie to ask the dowsing rods, or to ask, the gentleman through the dowsing rods. And he gave accurate answers, and these are things that Charlie hadn't seen. Charlie hadn't read the obit, and so only I knew that, and the gentleman who had passed knew that, obviously. And
to be fair to skeptics, though, I mean, if you're asking yes and no questions, you've got a 50-50 chance of being right, so if you're just guessing at it. So
I mean, yeah, that's
the odds significantly go down that multiple questions were asked and multiple questions were answered. But to give fair to skeptics, yes, if I was quote cheating it, I could guess and get lucky that it statistically is possible.
I can't get him to work at all, so it's I don't know, but
also while we were in the car, saying goodbye to Mr. B, we did try and get some EVP, try and do recordings, and got nothing. Not surprisingly, off that. There was someone else you saw there. Tell us a little bit about that. So,
and I tried to get it on camera, and I video recorded it, and when I looked back at it later, there was nothing there. Directly across from where we were sitting in the car, I had seen... That was plants, sorry. It's like windy outside, and I saw something move in my peripheral vision. Anyway, so when I was canvassing the graveyard while Charlie was talking to Mr. B, I had saw a couple places in the rear part of the cemetery where I had saw a flicker of movement towards a particular headstone, and typically to me that signifies that someone wants to talk. We ran out of time because Mr. B kind of took up all of our time before the weather got kind of crappy. So, his name started with an E, and I don't remember what it was. It was
a very old-fashioned E name.
It's gonna bug me, but I don't remember what it is anymore. But we didn't have time to talk to him before, because there was another group of people there, and we Corona, trying to keep distance and all that. But while we were doing, Charlie had his drone to try and get drone shots of the cemetery, and so while he was doing that, I was just kind of like during, and there was another gentleman who was leaning up against this headstone, the one that I had been to prior in that visit, and he was just staring at us, and very casual, like he was just leaning against his headstone, was like, "Hey, what's up?" type of thing, and just was like sitting there, and I don't see a lot. Well, that's not true. I do see quite a bit, but
basically every night.
Have I still been having night terrors?
Not recently, but I mean,
I've been so dead tired. I haven't had the energy to even have night terrors. But it was a good 15 minutes. He just sat there and watched us, and then we went home, and that was that.
Yeah, I didn't see him at all, so I wish I could. We tried taking pictures. We got nothing, so that's another thing. When we go back, we're going to have to see if we can find some sort of information or do a little bit of research. Or
I can take you right to his headstone. I remember it, but I just don't remember his name.
So let's talk about the other experience then, Mr. S.
Talking about the one from this last weekend?
Yeah.
Okay, so we went to another cemetery just kind of out in the boonies, and sorry, excuse me, out in the boonies, and again, Charlie was getting drone shots of the property, and it was another place that had a burial church. That one was still active, and I think it was a Presbyterian burial ground. Burial ground, Presbyterian church, and it was a lot more active that day just because it's Memorial Day weekend and people are visiting loved ones, and there's a lot of war vets and stuff that are buried there,
and just building on this, because you talked about people in the other story as well. When there are other people there, we don't do any of our investigating. We put our tools away and we go to the side, let them do their thing. We're not there to interrupt their time. And once it started getting more and more people there, we decided to leave because we're not there to interrupt their weekend or their process or their grieving.
No, and that's their family, and they're there to visit, and it's really inconsiderate and impolite to do what we do when there's other people present because, seems fairly obvious to me, like, why to not do that. But
yeah, so just reiterating, we don't do anything when there's other people around specifically for that reason.
It's all about consideration and respect. But so when I did my walkthrough, I got hits on 3 different graves. One was, it's Beulah Cochran, I think is what her name was. She was around the same age as us. But she passed away in, I want to say the 17 or 1800s.
Yeah.
Her grave was like a little overgrown, and it was hard to kind of tell because she wasn't really around anybody. So I got a hit off of her, and she's the one that pointed us to. Why are we calling him Mr. S? The dude's been gone for like 300 years.
That's true.
Arthur, and no, it wasn't Arthur, was it? No,
it was Mr. Edward.
Edward, yeah, Edward sounds right. I don't know why Arthur was in my head. I don't know. But he was another one. Oh, there's a chipmunk. That place was infested with chipmunks.
It was adorable and sad at the same time because the church had no foundation, but it had holes everywhere from where these chipmunks were just tearing it apart to live inside of it.
And they were everywhere. We pulled up and we saw one, and it was like, oh, that's so cute. He's under the little church. And then there was just hundreds of them everywhere. And they were digging all their holes into actual graves, and I don't know what kind of tunnel system they got under there. I'm sure it's Halloweeny as hell. But I was doing my rounds, and I saw this one headstone with a chipmunk on top of it, and he was dead ass staring at me, and I was like, all right, bro, I see you. And he was screaming. I don't know how chipmunks normally sound, so I don't know if that's normal or not, but he was staring at me, doing his little chipmunk noises, and I was like, okay. And so I went over there, and I got within 10 feet, and he looked at me kind of it looked like he just kind of nodded at me, and then he just went into his little tunnel that was in the grave. And I kind of laughed, and I walked over to the grave, and I was like, you've got a lot of friends, don't you? And I kind of just patted his headstone and then went on my way, and there was a couple there, a little bit farther north of his site, but it was interesting because Charlie came over to do his thing, and we got permission to try and take a video of him, but after that, we just lost.
Yeah, and that's where the conversation around energy and all that came up, what does it take to be photographed, or what does it take to move an object or interact with a tool or talk with us or anything like that?
And
because
that's something we're never going to know, but it's cool to try and measure it.
Right. And you were talking a little bit about how you get these feelings for people. So my tools, I feel differently than you do. You get the impression of the people and the empathy side, but through the copper rods, I feel just how strong someone's presence. And we're talking about Mr. B, it was someone putting a hand and pulling. It was strong. And Edward was very, very weak. And then when we asked, he said yes. And so we went to take the picture, and then he was just gone. And so that the question was then, was this us? Did us asking for you to do this, use up too much energy, too much time. We don't know. There's no hard science on it, but did we use up too much of whatever that resource was? And
it
then
could
you
be
have
that,
to leave.
or the other variable is that right around the time that we got to that point in our conversation, two separate groups of people showed up, and I'm not sure if maybe they just weren't interested in talking at that point.
Yeah, I got a little shy, or I didn't even know the people were there. They were behind the church, so it's possible they knew something I didn't, and whatever it was that just sparked an interesting discussion. And this will, again, we'll never know the answer, but I'd love to know the answer.
He also told us that he was going to come home with us.
Yeah.
And not in like a, scary way, just like, hey.
That's one of our standard questions. And that's, okay. Side note number 3, number 4, whatever it is for this.
Don't listen to our podcast if you don't like tangents. That's where we're going to leave that.
We need to create a standardized list of questions that we're going to ask or things that we want to do to be fair and thorough across our investigation. So we wanted to reach out to our podcast community and, DM us, Discord us, however you want to contact us. Give us an idea what questions should we ask or add to our list of set questions that we ask. But one of the questions we ask for every time is, are we going to be safe if we go home? Is anything going to follow us? And yeah, he was just like, well, I might follow you. And we haven't gotten an answer like that before.
Yeah, but nothing came home with us. I can normally feel when it does, and it didn't.
And that's why it really felt joking and fun, because obviously he wasn't coming after us.
I really wouldn't mind if Mr. B came home and lived with us.
No,
I really wouldn't. He's so talkative.
He specifically said that he could, but he did not want to come to Salem.
Yeah,
I don't blame him. So
Salem's a shithole, so I don't blame him. But yeah, I mean that's pretty much what we've been doing. We've been hitting a lot of graveyard cemeteries. We went out to Salem's historic City View Cemetery.
Pioneer.
It's Pioneer and then City View,
yeah.
like right next to each other, and got some great shots. Charlie got some great shots on the drone and on his camera of some mausoleums of Ford, and I don't remember what the other one. I think Cook.
I don't remember.
I don't know. They're on the photos and stuff when we go and put them up on the Patreon, but didn't really get anything there at all. And that is a huge gravesite too. And it surprises me that I didn't get hits on anything.
Yeah, but I mean, we only explored one portion of it. He said it's huge. There's a whole lot more to go around.
Completely separate cemetery too.
Yeah.
But also, Memorial Day weekend, so it's just a lot more crowded than. I mean, crowd is a relative term. It really wasn't crowded, but there were more people there than normally that we see. So
yeah, and we don't know what causes that. So does people moving around and more people cause them shyness or not wanting to be there? Who knows?
Yeah. So we went there. I'm trying to think. We're still trying to find the one in Scotts Mills, but that's like finding a needle in the haystack.
Yeah, we got a lot of different answers about where that's at, but we're gonna try. We'll Google Maps it and see. The other one I would really like to visit, I don't know if we've talked about this on the podcast or not, but there's one near the Chemawa Indian School that's very clearly marked that you are not allowed to go there, and we're not gonna.
No, we haven't talked about that, but absolutely under no circumstances are we doing anything with that. No,
that's just screaming for
property,
disrespect and a whole bunch of other stuff. But it's.
That community has dealt
wonderful.
with so much bullshit already, and I'm not going to add to it. That's their place. That's their pride. No.
Yeah, and another supporter led us to that one. There was a lot of interesting information that came from that area. So
historically, it's fascinating. Like if you've researched the Chemawa Indian School, it was unfortunately a part of a lot of the integration that United States and Canada tried to do back in the day in trying to assimilate Native Americans into, I don't know what the PC term is, our culture. I don't know.
I don't know the proper way to say all that, but
the history there is just so sad, and there's a lot that goes into it that a lot of people aren't aware of, honestly. And the Chemawa Indian School is one of the only charter schools in the Pacific Northwest. Like, people come from all over the world to come there. And
I don't even know if it's going to be there for much longer. There was some talk of them putting a casino there instead. So
I hope not. Anyway, that's not our place. Anyway.
That's ultimately the thing is that, it's not our place to investigate. That's not our place to go into that cemetery. It's not our place to dig all that up. So that's one we're not going to touch with the 10-foot pole. But there's a lot of interesting there, and it's a beautiful area. But
it is beautiful, and there's a lot of
not a place we belong.
No. And I encourage people to not seek that out because it's hard to find for a reason.
Well, that's going to build on to the next point here. We visited one other place that we haven't talked about, that this beautiful church on it that you don't want to go back to.
Oh, yeah, the other one with the burying church.
And I wanted to share some information on that, but then so they left this church unlocked, and the idea was that it's there for everyone. It's a community church. Anyone can go in there. Anyone can use it.
Well, the gentleman who built it in the 1800s or left the money for it to be built said that it was a non-denominational church and anyone of any religious belief was welcome there, and they've kept it. They've
kept the upkeep, and they keep it unlocked so you can literally go in there anytime. And
the architecture is just phenomenal.
The fear is that we share this location, not to our listeners, but potentially someone could go ruin that. All it takes is one person to go in there and do something bad, and then that's ruined. Literally hundreds of years of that being open to the public, it could be destroyed overnight by one person.
Right, a significant part of history, and I don't want to see that get laid
So that's
away,
always disappointing when we find something awesome like that, but we can't really share it with them, not because...
No, the only locations we will ever give out are locations that are pretty much already public domain that have been talked about and, frequency, like Lafayette.
Lafayette's not exactly a well-kept secret, so...
No, but for as far as, like, super rural cemeteries, we most likely will not ever give those locations or names.
And there's, like, my family cemetery that someday we're going to go to, but I don't think we'll be sharing coordinates on that because it's... very undisturbed, very out of the way family cemetery, and I'd like it left that way. And it just sucks, People suck that you can't share those beautiful things because the off chance someone's going to ruin it.
Washelli, up in Seattle, when we eventually do go back up to Washington, will be one that we will share with you guys. So I have a lot of family that's buried in Washelli, both in the mausoleum and in the ground. I don't know if that's PC. I don't know. And so I've got a lot of family there, and it's site to like a massive like military site. It's insane how big this place is. And Charlie hasn't ever seen it. And I've been there a couple times when we put my grandma's ashes in the mausoleum, and I was visiting my grandma. And I've been doing a lot of stuff on like Ancestry.com and doing a lot of that. And I found a lot of my people. I have one that's buried out in Staten Island in the I think it's called Snug Harbor. They also do ghost tours and stuff now.
Yeah.
Well, not now because Corona, but a lot of interesting history there and too. So while we would love to share these locations with you guys, it's just out of respect for the property and the people that are resting there. Not so. What else did you want to talk about?
One of the other things, and this will require much more research, but I thought it would be interesting to at least bring up the topic and start talking about. This goes back to nobody has all the right answers, is all the various things that people use to ward off evil ghost spirits, things like that, where they come from, the lore behind it, the ideas behind it, if you've got anything offhand. I know there was a TikTok video about someone using that filter, and they said they didn't have ghosts because they had like a smudging tool or something in the window. Talking about garlic to ward off vampires, or referencing Keen Andrews again, gave us it was like an iron nail, salt, and some sort of oil in a bag, and interesting things like that. I know iron is like one of those things across multiple cultures. Iron is good for a lot of different, quote, supernatural things, from werewolves to ghosts to skeletons. Even like Dungeons and Dragons and Skyrim, for example, reference iron as doing, quote, more damage to the undead. So it's pop culture. It's there, but where does that come from and why?
Yeah, I don't have an answer for you there because I don't have enough educational background to be able to answer that. I can, however, tell you what I use and what I've been brought up to use. So I was raised Lutheran, so the belief that if you want to ward off demonic activity or ghostly entities or whatever you want to call them, your handy crucifix, your salt. But as I've grown into pagan roots, I cast a circle before we leave, and protect myself with that, and salt, gopher dust, and sage are things that I use personally, and Charlie has his own rituals and stuff too, but
it's not really helpful, but fun fact, half fact, we're going to call it a factoid. So the Count from Sesame Street, the reason they chose him as a vampire, supposedly according to the internet, is that if a vampire visited you, you could spill rice or beans on the ground, and before they could kill you, they would have to count each individual thing, so they were weak towards large numbers of small items.
Oh, hey, speaking of cemeteries, I just got an email from the Lee Mission Cemetery cleanup.
Oh, awesome. And that goes back to our last episode where we were talking about giving back and doing things. The most important kit in our toolkit is I bought us trash bags and gloves so that when we're out doing these investigations, we can clean up garbage and such.
It's hilarious.
And do some maintenance.
The first time you bring that is when we were at City View Cemetery and we parted because the cemetery was so massive, so we each took a section and just kind of explored on our own. And I was off cleaning graves and stuff without the gloves. And
you should wear gloves.
Yeah, I know. You'll probably see that in the vlog we'll put up on Patreon too. It's like, oh, Charlie's gonna kill me, but I'm not gonna tell him, but it's on video, so you'll see it eventually. But yeah.
Did you wash your hands?
Yeah, you have a gallon of hand sanitizer in the car, so sorry, I'm just reading this email and they said, yeah, they are gonna let us do part of the cleanup in Lee Mission.
That's awesome.
When this whole virus thing blows over.
Yeah.
If we don't have anything else, there was a thing I wanted to share with you guys that I found on TikTok that I thought was pretty funny and kind of creepy.
I don't know how well that they can see through the...
Well, it's audio, my love, so
okay,
you don't have to see nothing.
Just trying to help our listeners out, just in case.
Alright, so this is so you know how a lot of different generations have their like creepy lullabies, like Ring Around the Roses and yada yada yada.
And the Russian lullaby that's in Metro that everyone uses.
Oh, I love it though. The Bye Bye Bayushi.
Yeah, that one.
I don't speak Russian. But someone on TikTok made a Corona lullaby, and I thought it was really creepy, and so I want to share that with you guys. It's by Chaotic Creator, so if you hear this, we are playing your tunes, so hopefully I hooked up this Bluetooth thing correctly.
Are you sure you want to start at the max loudness? Yeah, let's save our ears.
At the food store, Mommy's out of town. She's working at the hospital since Rona came to town. Hide away, Miss Rona's come to town. Hide away, she's come to take us down. Miss Rona's at the doorstep, I'll keep 6 feet away. But Grandma needs the paper, I'll take her some today. Hide away, Miss Rona's come to say. Hide away, I'll keep 6 feet away. But Grandma needs the paper, I'll take her some today. And here's a note from Rona, she wanted me to say. Hide away, keep 6 feet away. Hide hide away, she brought us down today.
I love it.
So yeah, she's got some great illustrations like in watercolor on her TikTok page. So if you guys, listen to this and have TikTok, I'd strongly encourage you to go to at Chaotic Creator on TikTok. It's pretty good. I like it.
I love that that's coming out because part of this whole pandemic and everything going on is a lot of people are saying that people are taking it too seriously or that people aren't taking it seriously enough, and humor has always been a part of humanity. People have always made nursery rhymes in light of bad situations, black humor and all that. So not glad for the pandemic, but I'm glad to see humanity hasn't changed and we're still finding the best of a worse situation.
Right. Well, do you got anything else?
Well, we got an official mascot.
Oh God, I forgot about the Furby.
Yes.
You should put it. No, don't put it up to your mic. It's just gonna fart and vomit all over it. So
after much debate,
there wasn't much debate.
She did let me get a Furby, who will now be our mascot. His name is Abby.
My condition was it doesn't look like one of those abominations that's like a snake with a Furby face attached and like crazy shit that you find on eBay.
Yeah, it's an unmodified Furby.
Which, funny story, so I was really drunk one night, and I think it was day 3 of you having it, and so it's supposed to close its eyes when it goes to sleep, and it did not that night. And I drunkenly stumbled into the office to get something, and I saw it sitting on Charlie's desk, and it was sleeping with its eyes black and wide open. And you woke up with...
She covered it with a tissue and one of my rosaries.
I had completely forgotten about it, and it was the first thing when I came in the next morning. You're like, "Hey, can I talk to you?" And I was just like, "What?" He's like, "Did you do this?" And I was like, "What are you talking about?" And I looked over and I was like, "Oh yeah, that was me."
So fan art and potential voice clips to come from our mascot, bright orange Furby, who will help us ghost hunt one of these days, but I'm not going to unleash him in a graveyard because he has a bad habit of farting right now, and that's just... We talk about respect and bringing this thing into a graveyard and all. Yeah, no.
Speaking of Abby, Charlie's going to be putting up his really cringy anime wannabe up on our Patreon.
Fiction. So. Yes, the first chapter of Abby X Abby, Is It Wrong to Fall in Love with a Furby, will be posted soon for the world to enjoy.
Is the fact that it's a demon in the story something I'm allowed to talk about, or is that supposed to be like a...
No, that's the whole point of it.
So Abby is short for Abaddon.
a demon who possessed a Furby, and a 16-year-old girl purchases it from a store and falls in love with it over the course of a summer.
We have some art in the makes that's gonna be made with Abby, so you'll get to see that soon.
You'll get to enjoy that.
Oh.
But yeah, I think
Furby's
that's the
worst
episode.
thing. Yeah. So we know we haven't been consistent on recording. Sorry, the quarantine kind of fucked things up for everybody. So Charlie and I have been working a ton, and
yeah, I've been doing 60-hour weeks, so
Animal Crossing won't build its own village, so we've been a little not consistent with that, and we want to apologize. We haven't forgotten about you guys. We're still here. We're still researching content. I have no idea what we're doing in the next week, but
we'll get something up.
Yeah. So we hope you guys are staying safe. Your families are safe, that you're writing this quarantine thing out with a lot of snacks and staying at home, and when you can't, wear masks, please. If not for yourself, do it for other people who have weak immune systems and other stuff. Okay, thanks.
Cue the music.
All right, let's get this going. All right, night, my spooky dudes. This is Transcendence, and I'm Emma Strange.
And I'm Charlie Ripley.